I guess my most important question for you is, what is your justification for taking away money from the wealthy to give to the poor?
Um, all right. Well, yeah, I guess my justification, yeah, I mean, we kind of covered this when we were talking about welfare before, but my justification is basically that I think that it produces better outcomes just on aggregate for society in terms of reducing poverty, in terms of encouraging things that lead to positive growth effects. Like I think it leads to more entrepreneurship depending on the program. I think it leads to yeah, just an overall like higher quality of living, stuff like that. Yeah, I think redistribution has a lot of positive effects there.
Okay, cool, cool,
Uh,
cool.
And I think
Um,
just real quick on the economics argument, I think the classic argument that most economists will cite for why taxing the rich to redistribute to the poor is what is it called again? I'm forgetting. The diminishing marginal utility of income is like the basic
mhm.
idea is that like when giving like if you're like a millionaire and you're earning like $1 million every year, like missing like for example like $50,000 in your annual income, it's not really that significant to you. You might even be able to just forgo it entirely, and like because you're just earning so much already. But to someone who's poor, like you give them an additional $50,000 per year in income, that's a massive change in their like quality of life overall and center of living. So that's I guess one of the fundamental arguments that I'd give for that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's fair. Um, so how do you know that it is better to give money to people who are poor than to the wealthy? And we kind of already touched on this. But how do you know it's more, or what is your justification for why it's more efficient to give money directly to the poor who, in the standards of the economy, are not good with money?
Um. Well, I mean, how do I know it's you asked me how do I know it's good to give money to the poor? I mean, like it depends
Yeah.
on
So, like,
good.
would you
Yeah,
say it's more efficient for the economy to have a welfare state as opposed to not having a welfare state?
yeah, I think so overall. Yeah,
Okay, so I just want to know why you think that.
yeah, yeah. Well, once again, it comes down to I think there's a strong empirical case for it on a lot of factors. I think there's like I think for example, in like one factor is inequality. I think inequality has the potential to have a lot of effects on efficiency. Just I think we know this through various studies that have been done, but it's also like there it leads to less stability in societies when there's more inequality because there's it's kind of like a Marxist analysis, although I'm not a Marxist, but there's like this idea of like sort of class
Just a little.
conflict and all of that. I don't know how much that exactly is the reason, but I do think inequality does have a reason to play in that. And then the other reasons would be, as I mentioned, I think that the diminishing marginal utility point that I brought up is a very strong point in the reason why I think that there's more efficiency. I think that there's also the argument of what am I thinking? There's like another in regards to propensity to consume, I believe is the variable. I think that lower income people have a higher marginal propensity to consume than on average than rich people. And I think like
That
consumption
makes
is one of
perfect
the
sense.
yeah, and I think consumption is one of the like it's literally one of the biggest calculate like things that we calculate when it comes to calculating growth. And so I think, like, yeah, well, the more consumption that happens due to redistribution, I think that leads to more growth. Even if I do acknowledge as well that, to be fair, there is a slight negative effect on growth when it comes to taxing, depending on the tax, of course. But I do acknowledge that there is a negative effect to taxing. I'm not saying that taxing is like flawless or anything like that, but I think it's
Hmm.
outweighed overall by the positive effects that redistribution can have. That's my case.
Okay, okay. Okay, so there's two really interesting rabbit holes we can go down from this point.
Hmm.
The first one is inequality, and the second one is poor people's, you know, what is it? Tendency to consume. So those
Yeah.
are those are two different things that are really interesting. The shorter point that I
Hmm.
think we can get out of the way really quick is
Mm-hmm.
that, and this is anecdotal because we're just having a conversation, okay?
Yeah, yeah,
But
sure.
this is
Yeah.
anecdotal. What I see tends to happen with poor people is
Mm-hmm.
they will, as it sounded like you said before, they tend to consume more, and they don't
Yeah.
consume in efficient ways. So like like I've seen anecdotally, like my friends, but also like online and videos and stuff, that poor people will make bad financial decisions. Usually they'll buy things that are not within their economic reach. Like maybe they'll buy like a good car, or maybe they'll buy some really, really nice clothes that are very expensive, like signature brands and things like this. They will often go out to eat very often, and they'll buy food that's expensive compared to what they can just get in a grocery store, which is far healthier and far cheaper. I think if we add all these things together, it does seem like there's a propensity for many poor people to consume more. And this isn't to say that lots of rich people don't also consume a lot, but I would say
Mm-hmm.
that self made millionaires probably have a propensity to consume less and invest more.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's probably the case. I do find it interesting, and I guess this is getting a bit more into your system again, which maybe we don't want to do. But I do find it interesting that you're kind of the one making the argument that there's a certain set of people in the economy that's poor people that spend inefficiently. Because I would think that from your economic principles, like on a purely free market level, like everybody is spending money efficiently, right? They're spending money in the way that they prefer. Isn't that like the libertarian theory that like everybody like the money that the way that the money goes in like a purely free market system that
Mm-hmm.
it's the way that it is like it's
Well,
efficient, right? Like,
yeah, it's okay. It's interesting because we're using efficient in two different ways here. What
mm-hmm,
I would say is that in the economy, the most appropriate term is that people will buy what they value most.
mm-hmm,
This is one of our praxeological beliefs, or like a praxeological axiom, which is that people will follow their preferences, which is very simple. But like this
mm-hmm,
scales very big into like the idea that humans are very different in their nature, and some humans will buy things that, well, everybody will buy what they value, but some people value short term pleasure versus long term pleasure. And the way I look at it
mm-hmm,
is people who stay poor. This isn't to mean like people like you and me who are poor right now, but will but if we're smart, we'll be a little bit richer off than we did start. Um,
mm-hmm,
the idea that people who stay poor for long periods of time are just bad with money, and people who are like self-made millionaires, people who keep their wealth and don't lose wealth are good with money. And
mm-hmm,
it's just a difference in values. People who invest more and consume less value a long term, it's called low time preference people. They
mm-hmm,
prefer to have a longer, more extensive utilization of pleasure in the form of like, what is it? Like consumer goods versus people who prefer a high time preference, meaning they consume a lot more in the short term, therefore taking away any chance of having a much better long term life. Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean that makes sense to some degree. So like basically you believe that people who are poor tend to have like shorter time preference. They're more like, yeah, I guess that lends into the idea that they have higher propensity to consume because
Mm-hmm.
like um yeah, I guess, but I guess my question there is that like even if say I grant that do you think that like the fact that they spend in ways that may not be the most optimal for themselves necessarily lead to the like worse economic outcomes? Or like
It
what are your
it
thoughts there?
leads to worse economic outcomes for them, not rich people. It actually benefits rich people because rich
Mm-hmm.
people are on they control the asset, so they receive the profit. Well, them and the
Mm-hmm.
government benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely like I guess a possibility. I am not entirely sure if but like I guess because from what I understand is that like the when it comes to the propensity to consume thing, my understanding is that the reason that poor people have a higher propensity to consume is because obviously when you're poor, you a lot bigger proportion of your income is spent on things like your necessities, right? Like your bills, your food, everything. It's just like because you have like an overall smaller income pool, right? It's like
Hmm.
a lot of your like a lot of those expenses are things that so like whenever you like when you're poor and you're getting like more money, a lot of the time that money is like just automatically going into like spending more on those necessities that you may not have been able to afford, and then when you get more an additional money, then you can invest in those. When it comes to maybe if put, I guess I don't necessarily disagree that there probably are some cases of poor people who are poor just who got into their environment by making bad financial decisions. Like I don't doubt that's the case. I don't know. I mean, like that gets into like a kind of like different sort of philosophy when it comes to like I'm a determinist. I don't know what you are, but like I believe that people's
Determinist.
decisions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't believe that it's like based on like their own like free will necessarily, right? Like I believe that a lot people's obviously like their ability to make decisions are based on their environments, and I think when you're poor, generally the case is that you probably grew up in a pretty shitty environment, right? Like you probably grew up in a poor environment. That's what led you to continue to be poor in your
Hmm.
later life. Like I think we even have like statistics on that. Like generally it's the case that if you're poor, it's like there's like a bell curve shaped graph, and if you're on the poor end of the income spectrum, you're more likely to stay there like for the rest of your life, and if you're on the rich end of the spectrum, you're more like way more likely to stay there for the rest of your life. So if you're rich, if you're born rich, you're going to be rich probably for the rest of your life. If you're poor, you're probably going to stay poor for the rest of your life. It's like a pretty common statistical trend, and so
And
and
that's
I think that
that's
that's
totally
yeah
fair.
yeah
But you wouldn't disagree with me that even though people are determined to do certain things, that we ought to reward them for bad behavior. For example, if
hmm
all murder, so we agree on determinism. So we agree that murderers are determined to murder based on the billions of factors that led them to that point. But we
hmm
wouldn't reward or let that be neutral that a murderer get away with murder. We would punish him. So even though that we accept determinism exists, that doesn't necessarily change the way that we operate society. It just means
yeah
that we understand why things happen. It doesn't mean that we're going to let criminals commit criminal activity.
yeah. I disagree with that. Sorry, actually, I don't
You
disagree. I
do
agree,
disagree with
but
that? Oh, okay, you agree.
no, no,
Okay.
sorry, I I misspoke there.
I was like, oh
But
shit.
uh, what I meant to say is that I agree, but there's my sort of the differences I think that we have are slightly different in that I would say my justification for why, like in a deterministic, view of the world, why we would still do things like punishment is I don't look at it as like a retributive thing. Like like we have to just punish these people because they've committed a bad thing. I look at it as there are effective ways of deterring those kind of actions, and like my only goal in terms of having things like, for example, a prison system where we keep people who have done bad behaviors or like stuff like murder, is to deter them from doing it again. Right? It's for me, it's purely like an outcomes based thing, like I'm utilitarian as mentioned. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that would be my rationalization for why that kind of thing happens. Because like in a deterministic worldview, I don't believe in this concept of like we punish people because it's that doesn't make sense to me if you're a determinist. I believe it's just a matter of reducing like the harms, and I think that that's the justification there.
I
Bit of a
actually agree
tangent,
with
but
you. I
yeah,
agree with you. I'm against retributive justice. I'm for restitutive restitutive justice.
yeah,
I believe in restitution as a form of justice. And
yeah,
this is a far, like extremely far better system than anything the government could ever imagine. And the reason why is
hmm
we don't punish people for the sake of punishing people. We punish people so that they pay back those they hurt. And that's the way that the justice system should operate. It's not to punish people via our anger or our frustration or a sense of revenge, because the justice system we have nowadays is based off revenge. But what we should have is restitutive justice, where we have the criminal pay back the people that they hurt. And at that point, they go free after they pay enough of the restitution that they owe the people that they hurt. And how much restitution they pay is up to the courts that we have. But also the reason that this works so well is that in a decentralized system, a decentralized justice system, it would be
Mhm.
open source. So yes, we're letting a criminal back on the streets, but everybody's going to
Mhm.
know who this criminal is because we have open source information networks that allow people to know these things. We have current events, we have local news stations, we have hundreds of millions of online journalists to know what's happening in every area of the decentralized system. So
Mhm.
restitution better than retribution.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think I disagree necessarily. Obviously, I disagree on like the end camp stuff. I would still be in favor of
Yeah.
having like a state to do like having like some kind of deterrence that the state operates. But yeah, um, I guess to get back on the topic that we were discussing,
Do you want to
it
go
was
to
late.
do you want to go to inequality now, or should we still stay on what were we talking about?
Yeah,
Inequality and
we kind of went on a tangent.
yeah,
Um,
I said it would be
yeah,
quick,
kind
but
of. I guess we can go
so
to inequality if you wanna. I don't know.
okay,
Um,
cool. I've really been wanting to ask this question to people because people
yep.
seem to have a lot of qualms with the economic hierarchy in life. And so when I say the
Yep.
economic hierarchy, I'm talking about
Mhm.
financial systems, the government, things like this, which is
Yep.
fairly one of the most important aspects of our lives. But I'm just
Yep.
curious if you want to maintain a um a welfare logical framework in the same way that you hold the economic hierarchy to the rest of the hierarchies. So when I say the rest of the hierarchies in life, I'm talking about attractiveness, height, athleticism, charisma. I'm talking about genetic traits that you're born with. There are
Mhm.
hundreds of hierarchies in life, and it seems to be hypocritical of state welfarists to want to have a type of welfare on the financial hierarchy, but not have welfare on other hierarchies like attractiveness, athleticism, charisma. So, what do you think of that?
Mm, could you rephrase that? Sorry, I'm just
Sure, sure.
it
Yeah, I'll make it
kind of
super
went over my
simple.
head. Yeah.
I'll make it super simple. Um, so we've got a jock in a high school, and he's
Yeah.
very handsome. He's very athletic. He's tall. Girls love him. And then
Yeah.
you've got a kid who's like maybe like less socialized. He's a little chubby. He plays games. It
Yeah.
seems to me that this is incredibly unequal and incredibly unfair that this
Yep.
high school jock is going to attract tens of girls, and this kid who's a little bit chubby playing on his game system is not going to attract a lot of girls. That just seems really unfair. And the difference
Yeah.
here is inequality. There's a hierarchy in almost every aspect of life, and one of those hierarchies is attractiveness. But
Yeah.
why don't we have a welfare system for attractiveness? Like it seems like we have lots of hierarchies, but we choose only one hierarchy, which is economic hierarchy, where we um where we push our welfare beliefs onto, but we don't push these welfare beliefs onto other hierarchies. So it seems hypocritical of anybody pushing an economic welfare hierarchy versus all the other hierarchies. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I get it now. Well, um, yeah. I mean, my answer is probably going to be a lot a lot more boring than probably what you get from like a socialist or like a Marxist or whatever. Like, my considerations for inequality are just insofar as they affect outcomes, right? That's like my goal fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when it comes to inequality in other regards, like inequality of attractiveness, as you mentioned, I'm honestly not even sure if there's like how we would even think about like reducing that inequality. That seems very weird to me. I don't know,
But we do the same
like
thing we do with the economics.
like well, yeah. I mean, economics we do. Yeah, go ahead.
We basically take away the things that make attractive people attractive, and then
Mhm.
we take away the things that make attractive people attractive, and then we force unattractive people to be more attractive. I guess that's how we would do it.
So like we could just give like poor people like plastic surgeries and
Yeah.
I don't know, we force like
No, I
the
don't know. Well, maybe, but that's weird because then we're injecting economic hierarchy into the attractive hierarchy. So it would have to be
Yeah.
something like we force the chubby kid to work out or something, and and then we would have to. I'm probably butchering this a little bit. We would do things that
Yeah.
make the attractive boy less attractive. Like we would force him to shave his head. We would shave his head against his will. We might do like some surgery on his limbs to make him shorter or something like this. Like we would essentially make it a more fair playing field for the unattractive and the attractive.
Okay. Um. Right. Okay. Yeah. So basically, we make the poor kid like work out, get attractive. We make the attractive kid get less attractive, and then
Yeah.
we like everybody just kind of looks the same. It's like
Because your main
yeah,
qualm is inequality in economics, right? So the question is, how do we
yeah.
lower the gap? Will we force the gap lower? That's what we do in
Hmm.
economics. So we should do the same thing
Yeah.
across every hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like that argument would probably work to someone who believes that like, fairness is like as like an inherent sort of thing that we ought maximize or whatever. Like for me it's like, as I mentioned, it's more like an outcomes thing. Like I'm not really convinced that like, people's attractiveness matters all that much to I mean, I'm sure, like to some people it does, like how attractive they are. It matters to like their well-being, their outcomes, and but I'm not sure if it would be particularly efficient or effective if we like constructed like a state program to try to like it's also like incredibly subjective in terms of who's attractive and who's unattractive, right? That's like way less.
Well, I would I
It's
would say that
way
attractiveness is objective, but
well. That is crazy. You believe morality is like doesn't exist, but you believe attractiveness is objective? What the fuck? How
bro,
do you square
what do
that?
you how do you live life? Do you look around you? How do you not see that attractiveness is objective?
I mean, like, well, when you say objective, because like different people have different things they find attractive, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So isn't that like subjective by just that fact?
So I would say that there are objective parameters that kind of create the foundation of attractiveness, and then there's
Hmm.
some level of subjectivity like on top of that foundation. Does that make sense?
Okay, so, or I think I've heard of these kind of theories before. So like, yeah, I think there are like I think it's like in art or something where they say there's like
Hmm.
objective sort of what is it called? It's like math or something. There's like a sort of like a structure for like I think the face. It's like the
Yeah, like
perfect shape or
symmetry,
something.
symmetry and asymmetry.
Yeah. Um. Okay. I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, I have not thought about that topic at all, to be honest with you. So I
Okay,
have no
well,
idea what my thoughts are.
but
But
if you understand what I'm trying to get at, it
Mhm.
seems as though you're saying inequality is intrinsically bad, right?
No, I don't believe it's intrinsic. Like the only thing I believe it's that is intrinsically bad is suffering. I believe that inequality is instrumentally bad.
Oh, wait, so you don't have anything against inequality?
Not inherently. Like okay, like I mentioned, I'm like fundamentally all my ethics and all my like sort of positions boil down to sort of utilitarian calculus. If it was the case that
Hmm.
you could demonstrate to me that like a highly unequal society produced like the best like aggregate outcomes for everybody, then I'd probably switch my position. I'd be like, okay, yeah, inequality is bad. My argument that I made on inequality was purely like an empirical case. I think that there's like I've looked at like empirical evidence that inequality can have negative effects on stuff like growth economically and stuff like that. But if I was shown like the counter examples or like counter evidence, I would change my view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
okay. I wouldn't disagree with the. Or,
Mhm.
wait. Hold on. Wait, is there? I forget the studies. I could have sworn there
Mhm.
was some sort of research that says that inequality breeds like resentment or something like that. Um,
Yeah, I think
but I'm
yeah,
not even sure if that's the case. I'm not even sure if that's proven. Like I understand that it breeds jealousy. Like that
mhm,
makes sense. And
mhm.
maybe jealousy turns to resentment, but that doesn't mean that the person on the bad end is justified in their jealousy or their envy, right? But I mean, I guess it depends on
Um
how you look at it because
yeah.
so inequality can either be bad or good. Okay, it depends on your value system. But in your value system, inequality would be bad or good depending on how much, if it benefits people or not. So
Yeah,
if
if
inequality benefits, if it doesn't benefit people, then it would be bad. Or if it leads to negations of benefits, then it would be bad. But if inequality is neutral, then inequality wouldn't matter to you at all, right?
yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's the case that I made for inequality it was just like a very brief point. Like, I think there's like from what I've seen, there's some literature on economic effects of inequality, and they seem to be negative to me. There seems to be like a pretty decent correlation there that inequality has some negative effects on economic indicators. But like I mentioned, like I would change my view if it was the opposite way. Like if reality like shifted such that inequality, more inequality actually led to an increased like well-being account or like aggregate well-being. Yeah, then I'd be in favor of inequality. Like, yeah,
Okay.
it's
So
yeah, it's not an intrinsic value of mine.
very briefly then,
Yeah.
in your belief, is inequality bad in economics?
Um, to my understanding, well, once again, to my understanding, it seems that it does have bad effects, but I wouldn't make like a blanket statement there.
Would you so okay, so how does it have bad effects and on who does it have bad effects? I guess would be my next question.
Um, Yep. So my understanding of the general argument is that it has negative effects just on terms of economic growth. Is I think there's like been a couple of studies on that from like pretty large institutions like the IMF and stuff like that. I think the some of the reasons that they mention is because inequality leads to a lot like higher instability in a lot of senses. So there's a lot more political tension and tension just among people due to higher inequality. There's like there seems to be a relationship with inequality and things like lower like trust among people in society,
Mm-hmm.
and even things like crime rates. I believe there was a study on that. I'll have to like pull up like all my research to know for sure. Like, so I'm not talking bullshit. But my
Okay.
yeah, those are the
So do you
things
think
that
we could
I've seen. Yeah.
transfer could we transfer this argument over to the inequality of attractiveness? So say for example, like
Hmm.
I don't think you would disagree with like this whole red pill movement for like the past what 8 years,
Hmm.
or the the gigantism of it,
Hmm.
and the growth of it. Don't you think that there's been like a lot of resentment and envy and jealousy from, let's say, the people from the bottom part of the attractiveness hierarchy who aren't able to have, sex or aren't able to get long-term partners versus, people on the higher level who are very attractive, who get tons of partners, get tons of, sex, stuff like that. Don't you think
Hmm.
that there's a case to be made that we should have some sort of let's see, lowering the gap in inequality between those two groups?
Uh, I mean, I don't know. It's
Because
very
that's your
strange to
case
me.
for
Like,
economics. So why can't we do that for attractiveness?
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. My only thing is that I have no idea what that would look like. It's
Same.
like kind of blank
It'd
in
be
my mind.
insane.
Yeah. So like, I mean, is there a possibility of a world where like maybe forcing people like more attractive people to be less attractive and less attractive people to be more attractive somehow like makes people's lives better? Possibly. I don't know, but yeah, it's like I honestly have no idea how we would even get to that point, how we would even do that. I imagine like any way that we would try to enact it in society would be very like dystopian to the point where it's like it would probably cause a lot of like moral panic and suffering among society. So just on like that sort of intuition I have about it, I'd probably be against it. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Well, because
Mm.
you see my point though I'm making, right? Like I see this
Mhm.
hypocrisy in the idea that we're taking one hierarchy out of hundreds and we're
Mhm.
saying this is the hierarchy where we're going to introduce welfare. This one
Yep.
only. And it's
Yep.
like, well, why aren't if you believe that that's true, if you believe that we need to raise equality, we need to
Yep.
increase equality, why don't you hold that belief logically across the rest of your beliefs? Why is it just this one?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, I think your argument would probably be pretty effective against people who believe in like sort of like an intrinsic sort of belief that inequality is always bad. I don't hold to that, so it's but yeah, I could definitely see like how that would be like sort of contradictory to people who are like um kind of like I don't know like communists who like believe in absolute equality. Like you could like yeah, it'd
Yeah.
probably be like a good question to ask them like why okay, why don't we make the rich people or the more attractive people less attractive? I don't
And
know.
it,
I
it,
mean,
it would
yeah,
lead to
yeah,
some pretty nasty outcomes too. Like,
yeah,
like you said before, like plastic surgery to make attractive people uglier,
yeah.
plastic surgery to make uglier people more attractive. It would be like a dystopian nightmare. And I think that's one of the reasons that people don't want to kind of, like engage with it. Or like for charisma, like how would you lower the inequality in charisma between people? Like how
Mhm.
would you force somebody who's uncharismatic to become more charismatic? And then would you
Listen, okay,
like
this is how we do it. We just like create a like in the state education system, we just have like a red pill teacher who like does like the red pill
yeah,
class.
a red pill
That's
teacher?
how we do it.
True.
Yeah.
Oh
I don't know.
God. I just always thought that
Um,
was funny that, some people hold on to that idea. But okay, that's interesting.
yeah, I don't think we disagree much here. Like, yeah, like I mentioned, it's not inequality. Like the inequality thing for me is purely like an instrumental thing. Like, I think there's like reasons to believe it's bad in an economic sense. If there's like solutions, I think there's good solutions to it on an economic level. I don't know if there's good solutions to it on other levels. If there were, I'd be in favor. But like I said, I think it sounds like very dystopian to force people to, and it seems like it'd be a pretty bad thing. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
That's just my
true.
overall thoughts on that. Yeah.
That's fair.